In the land of the Nile, where gods walked among mortals and kings ruled by divine will, death was not the end, but a journey. A journey through the duatha, shadowed realm of the afterlife, where every soul must face judgment, trials of fire, and the eternal serpent of chaos. This is the story of the Book of the Dead, the most powerful epic of ancient Egypt. In this complete 12-part retelling, you will witness the soul's perilous passage, guided by Maat, tested by gods, and reborn in the eternal dawn. Welcome to the Egyptian mythology epic, the Book of the Dead. Chapter 1. The Whisper of Thoth. In the time before pyramids rose from the sands, and before kings wore crowns of gold, there was only silence across the Nile. The world was still raw, its edges uncertain, and the gods had not yet given all their gifts to mortals. Among the divine host who dwelt in the heavens was Thoth, the eye-besetted Lord of wisdom, knowledge, and writing. It was Thoth who measured the days and nights. It was Thoth who named the stars, inscribing their paths across the sky. And it was Thoth who carried the words of creation itself, the language that bound the universe in order. Unlike other gods who boasted of strength or radiance, Thoth was quiet, patient, and eternal. He knew that power did not come from sword or flame, but from words whispered in the right place at the right time. One evening, as the golden bark of Ra, the sun god, descended into the underworld to wage battle against the serpent Apophis, Thoth stood in silence at the edge of creation. He gazed into the black waters of Nun, the primordial abyss, and there he saw visions of countless souls, lost and wandering after death. They cried out, their voices thin as dust, for guidance. Some were torn apart by beasts, others stumbled blindly in the darkness, never to find peace. And Thoth's heart, though divine, grew heavy. These mortals, he whispered to the stars, they live, they toil, they die, yet they do not know the path beyond. If their lives end in silence and confusion, what purpose does Maat serve? What is truth if it cannot guide them past the final veil? The goddess Maat, the very embodiment of truth and cosmic balance, appeared beside him, crowned with her single white feather. Her voice was like wind over the river reeds. You are troubled, Thoth, she said. The order of the universe is perfect. Yet in death, mortals must prove themselves. If they are lost, it is because their hearts are unsteady. Perhaps, said Thoth, but even a pure heart cannot find its way in darkness without a lamp. They need guidance. They need words of power that open the gates, silence the demons, and teach them the names of the guardians. For only by knowledge can a soul survive the journey. Maat studied him, and then inclined her head. Then give them this gift. But beware, knowledge, once given, cannot be taken back. The same words that lift a soul into eternity may also be twisted by those who seek dominion. Thoth bowed. I understand, but I will write with care. So it was that Thoth, the divine scribe, began to weave the first spells of the dead. He took his reed pen, dipped it into ink made of the star's own light, and inscribed upon a scroll the secrets of passage. Each glyph he carved shimmered with life, not mere symbols, but living spirits of sound. The first spell he wrote was the spell of awakening, that a soul might rise from its tomb and remember its name. For without a name, the dead would fade into nothingness. The second spell was the spell of the gates, that when the souls stood before doors of fire, they could speak and the flames would bow away. The third spell was the spell of the serpents, teaching the words that turned venom to water and made monsters shrink before truth. And so he wrote through the long night until his scroll contained dozens of incantations, spells of light, of protection, of remembrance, of truth, each one a torch against the shadows. When Ra rose again in the east, Thoth rolled up the scroll and breathed upon it. The papyrus glowed, and the words sank deep into the fabric of eternity. Thus was born the first book of the dead, though in that age it was not yet called so. Among the gods it was known as the Book of Coming Forth by Day. For it was the promise that even in death the soul could rise again into the sunlight of eternal life. But as Thoth prepared to deliver this gift to mankind, another figure emerged from the darkness. Set, his red eyes gleamed with suspicion. "What are you doing, scribe?" Set growled. "Why do you waste your ink on mortals? They are weak, fleeting things, unworthy of the gods' secrets. Better to let them scatter in the underworld, food for Amit and the serpents. Order is for gods, chaos for men." Thoth stood firm. "You are wrong, Set. Mortals may be fleeting, but they are part of Mat. If chaos devours them all, then even the balance of the gods will falter. To protect them is to protect the order of the universe itself." Set laughed, his voice like thunder over the desert. "You speak of balance, but I see only folly. Give them these spells, and they will imagine themselves equal to us. They will demand eternity as their right, and some may use your words to call upon powers beyond their place." But Thoth did not yield. "Then it is a risk I will take, for even a single soul saved from darkness is worth more than silence." Set's shadow receded, but his laughter lingered, and in that laughter was a warning. The gift of Thoth would not be without consequence. So Thoth descended from the realm of the gods, carrying the scroll. He placed it in the hands of the first high priest, who trembled as the glyphs lit up his chamber. "These words," Thoth said, "are not merely ink. They are the voice of the gods. Teach them to the worthy. Inscribe them on tombs. Whisper them to the dead. Through them, no soul shall wander lost. Through them, even in darkness, Mat shall prevail." And with that, Thoth vanished into the night sky, his ibis wings carrying him toward the stars. The priest unrolled the scroll, and for the first time, the words of eternity touched mortal lips. And so began the legend of the Book of the Dead, a whisper of Thoth, carried into the hearts of men. Chapter 2. The souls awakening. The sun had fallen behind the horizon, and silence filled the burial chamber. Outside, the mourners had gone, leaving only the scent of incense and the faint glow of oil lamps flickering against stone walls painted with gods and stars. The body of the king, his name carved into countless monuments, lay, wrapped in linen, adorned with gold and lapis lazuli. But within the shrouds of cloth, beneath the heavy mask of a falcon, something stirred. It was not flesh that moved, but spirit. The soul of the king, his ba, winged and luminous, rose from his body like a bird rising from the waters. At first, he was disoriented. The chamber felt both real and unreal. He saw his own corpse below, mouth sealed, arms crossed, treasures heaped for the journey. Panic surged in him. "Am I dead?" he whispered. His voice echoed strangely, not from his throat, but from within his very being. Then, as though answering, a scroll appeared before him, radiant, alive with glowing symbols. The glyphs shimmered like fireflies. He reached for it instinctively, and when his hand touched the scroll, the words poured into him, filling his spirit with memory. It was the gift of Thoth, the first spark of the Book of the Dead. And in that moment, the soul understood. He was no longer bound to flesh. He stood at the threshold of the great journey into the Duat, the underworld of Egypt. Around him, the chamber dissolved. The painted walls cracked open like doors, revealing a vast, endless desert. Black sands stretched beneath a blood-red sky. A river, dark as obsidian, wound its way across the land, its current pulling toward a horizon of fire. From the shadows came voices, low, hungry, inhuman. Shapes shifted at the edge of sight, writhing forms with too many eyes, too many teeth. The soul trembled. But then the scroll within him pulsed, and the first spell ignited in his memory. I am he who awakens. I know my name. I shall not be cast into silence. The words rose from him like flame, and instantly the shadows recoiled. The whispers faded. For the first time, he understood. Words were weapons, stronger than blades. Gathering courage, he moved forward, each step taking him farther from the safety of his tomb. The sands burned his feet, though he had no body. The wind howled, carrying the cries of forgotten souls. Some drifted past hymn shapes. They had no names, no spells. They wandered without direction, falling into pits of blackness where monstrous forms awaited. The king no, the soul stopped, pity swelling within him. Why do you wander? He asked one of them. The shade turned, its face blurred, its voice broken. I was not buried with words. I was not given spells. My name is dust. I am nothing. The soul felt his heart ache, though no heart beat within him. But the scroll glowed again, and he understood. The fate of those without the book was to vanish, to become prey. He could not save them. His path was his own. And so he walked until the desert gave way to cliffs of obsidian. There stood a colossal gate, taller than pyramids, carved with fire. Two guardians, their bodies part lion, part crocodile, their heads crowned with serpents, barred the way. Their eyes glowed red as they roared. Who comes before the gate of flame? Fear seized him, but the scroll within whispered the words of passage. He raised his voice, steady as stone. I am the one whose name endures. I am he who speaks the words of Thoth. Open, for I know the secret names of flame. At his command, the fire upon the gate dimmed, curling back like smoke. The guardians lowered their heads, and the massive doors groaned open, revealing the path beyond. But as he stepped forward, the guardians' voices boomed again. Beware, mortal king. Each gate demands truth. If your heart is false, even words will fail. The soul bowed, acknowledging their warning, and passed into the darkness beyond. Now he entered a land of rivers and caverns. The sky above was gone, replaced by ceilings of stone studded with faint stars. A vast current flowed at his feet, black waters that hissed with serpents. Across the river, he glimpsed a throne of light, far, far away, and he knew that was where Osiris sat, Lord of the underworld, the one who would judge him. But the path was not direct. Before him loomed challenges, the caverns of guardians, the serpent rivers, the fields of blades. His journey had only begun. As he stood, a sound echoed across the river, the steady beat of drums, the creak of oars. A great bark, luminous and golden, sailed along the current. Upon it stood a god radiant as the sun Ra in his night form, battling through the underworld. Around him stood other gods, armed with spears and lightning, guarding the bark against the coiling shadow beneath the waters. The soul fell to his knees, awed. He had seen Ra's light in life, every day upon the Nile, but never like this burning, eternal, unyielding. Ra's gaze swept across the river, and for a moment their eyes met. The god did not speak, but the soul felt a command stir within him. Walk the path, stand in truth, do not falter. The bark sailed onward, vanishing into the dark. The soul rose, strength renewed. Ahead lay dangers beyond imagination, but he was no longer afraid, for he carried the words of Thoth, the spells of the dead. And thus the journey began, in earnest the path to judgment, the passage through Duat, the test of heart and truth. He stepped forward into shadow, toward destiny. Chapter 3. The Gates of Fire. The soul walked deeper into the underworld, and the sands gave way to stone. The air thickened, heavy with the smell of ash and smoke. Ahead, the path narrowed into a long corridor carved from black basalt, its walls pulsing with veins of molten fire. Every step echoed like thunder, as though the earth itself were alive and listening. At the end of the corridor stood the first of the 7 great gates, the Gate of Fire. It loomed like a mountain of bronze, its surface blazing with scarlet flames. Chains of molten gold coiled across its doors, rattling like serpents as sparks flew into the darkness. Before it crouched 2 guardians, their bodies blackened with soot, their eyes glowing like embers. One had the head of a jackal, the other of a serpent, and their voices merged as they spoke, shaking the corridor. Who approaches the first gate? Speak, ORB. Consumed. The soul faltered, for the heat scorched even his spirit. The flames rose higher, licking the ceiling, and he feared they would devour him. But then the scroll of Thoth pulsed once more within his chest, and he remembered the words, I am he who comes forth by day. I am the flame that does not burn, the fire that purifies, not destroys. Open, O gate, for I know your name. The guardians hissed, the serpent baring its fangs, the jackal gnashing its teeth. If you know our name, speak it, for without name there is no power. The soul drew in strength and spoke. You are Rikit, the burner of the unworthy. You are Sheset, the tongue of flame. By your names I command, let me pass. At once the fire dimmed, curling inward as if bowing before truth. The chains unwound, and the great doors groaned open, revealing the path beyond. The guardians lowered their heads in grudging respect, and the soul stepped forward. But beyond the gate lay no safety. Instead, he found himself in a vast cavern where rivers of fire flowed like serpents across the floor. Flames leaped high, and in them danced shadowy form spirits who had failed, their cries echoing in torment. They reached toward him with hands of ash, their mouths open in endless screams. Fear gripped him again, for though he carried spells, the sight of so many damned souls made him tremble. Could he truly endure? Then, from the fire itself, a voice arose, a whisper, sharp as a blade. All flames demand a sacrifice. What will you offer, mortal king? The soul froze. Sacrifice. He had brought treasures, gold, jewels, amulets, but those were buried with his body. Here, he carried nothing but his spirit and the words of Thoth. What could he give? The scroll within him glowed brighter, and the answer came. the heart. Not his heart of flesh, long buried in his chest of stone, but the heart of truth, his Ibe, the center of his being. It was the one thing that would be weighed before Osiris. It was also the one thing the flames could not consume unless he offered it willingly. The soul placed his hands upon his chest, and from within emerged a shining orb of light, his heart's soul, pulsing with memory. "I give not my heart away," he declared, "but I offer its truth, for my heart is pure, and it will not betray me. By Mat, let this fire bear witness." The flames roared, but instead of consuming, they parted. A bridge of black stone emerged, spanning across the rivers of fire. The cries of the damned faded, and the shadowy forms withdrew. The soul crossed the bridge, each step steady, until he reached the far side. Behind him, the gate closed with a thunderous crash. Ahead, the cavern opened into another corridor, darker and colder than before. He had passed the gate of fire, but he knew this was only the beginning. 6 more gates awaited him, each guarded by powers more terrible than the last. Beyond them lay the Hall of Two Truths, where Osiris himself sat upon the throne of judgment. And somewhere in the shadows, he felt the eyes of another watching him, not the gods of order, but something older, wilder. A whisper, faint but unmistakable, brushed across his mind. It was the laughter of Set, god of chaos. "You walk bravely, little soul," the voice hissed, "but courage fades, truth cracks. Fire was nothing. Let us see how you fare when shadows swallow you whole." The soul shivered, for though Set did not appear, his presence lingered like a storm on the horizon. Clutching the words of Thoth closer to his being, he pressed onward for the journey through the underworld. Chapter 4. The River of Serpents. The path narrowed, winding downward into shadow. The air grew damp, and a hissing sound echoed in the darkness, like 1,000 tongues scraping stone. The soul's steps slowed as he emerged into a vast cavern lit only by a dull green glow that seeped from the waters below. Before him stretched a river black and endless, coiling through the underworld like a serpent itself. The water was not water at all, but liquid shadow, thick, writhing, alive. And within it, serpents of monstrous size slithered, their scales glistening like bronze, their eyes glowing with hunger. Some had wings, others had many heads, their jaws wide enough to swallow a man whole. The river hissed with their voices, a chorus of malice. The soul trembled, for this was the River of Serpents, the second great trial of Duat. Upon its banks stood a lone figure, tall, gaunt, with the head of a crocodile and eyes like burning coals. In one hand, he carried a staff carved with hieroglyphs of flame. In the other, a coil of rope made from living snakes. His voice rumbled like thunder as he spoke. "Who dares approach the River of Serpents? Who would cross the waters of venom and fire?" The soul bowed, though fear gnawed at him. The scroll of Thoth glowed faintly within, guiding him. "I am the one who comes forth by day. I am he who has passed the gate of fire. I seek the throne of Osiris, and I shall not be turned away." The guardian's eyes narrowed. Words alone do not carry one across. The serpents hunger, and they feed only on fear. To cross, you must master their names. Without them, the river shall devour you. The soul lifted his gaze to the writhing waters. The serpents reared their heads, snapping their jaws, their fangs dripping venom that sizzled like acid. He felt his spirit weaken. How could he know their names? But again, the scroll of Thoth pulsed, and words rose within him, ancient and sharp. I know you, serpent of many coils. You are Apophis, who writhes against Ra. I bind you with words of flame. At once, a massive serpent rose from the water, blacker than night, its body endless, its maw wide enough to swallow the sun. This was indeed Apophis, the eternal serpent, who each night sought to devour Ra's bark. It hissed, coiling high above him, ready to strike. The soul spoke louder, his voice firm. Be broken, Apophis, for Ra's light is eternal, and your jaws shall never prevail. By the words of Thoth be bound. The glyphs from the scroll burst into flame around him, forming chains of fire. They leaped onto Apophis, binding its coils, searing its flesh. The great serpent thrashed, shaking the cavern, but the words held true. With a final hiss of rage, Apophis sank back into the waters, dragging the other serpents with him. The river grew still. The guardian nodded, lowering his staff. You have spoken the name. You have chained the shadow. The river shall now bear you across. From the dark waters rose a bark, its prow carved like the head of a falcon, its deck glowing faintly with starlight. The soul stepped aboard, the wood solid beneath his feet, though no hands rode it. Slowly, the bark drifted across the river, gliding silently over the black waters. Yet even bound, Apophis whispered from below, his voice curling like smoke. Chains break, words falter. You may bind me here, little soul, but chaos waits in every shadow. I will see you again. The soul clenched his fists, refusing to answer. His eyes stayed fixed on the far shore, where a faint light shone like a beacon. When the bark reached land, he stepped off, and the boat sank back into the river, vanishing. The guardian had disappeared, as though he had never been there. Only silence remained. The soul breathed deeply, though he had no lungs. He had crossed the river of serpents. But before him now stood another corridor, colder than the last. The walls dripped with water, and from the darkness came faint whispers, not of serpents, but of voices, countless voices, speaking his name, accusing him, mocking him. He realized with dread he was approaching the caverns of falsehood, where the dead must face the lies of their own past. And the laughter of Set echoed faintly once more, promising trials far more dangerous than fire or serpents. The soul gripped the scroll of Thoth, its glow steady, and stepped into the shadows. Chapter 5. The Caverns of Falsehood. The corridor narrowed, and the air grew heavy with whispers. They slithered through the dark like snakes, curling around the soul's ears, seeping into his heart. The walls themselves seemed to breathe, dripping with moisture, their stone slick and cold. Ahead, a faint green glow pulsed, as though the cavern itself were alive. The soul stepped cautiously, clutching the scroll of Thoth within him, yet the voices grew louder. At first, they were only murmurs, faint, familiar tones, but soon they grew sharp, echoing clearly. You were no just king. You starved your people while your tables overflowed. You sent men to war for your pride, not for Matt. You loved power more than truth. The soul faltered. These were not strangers' words. They were his own people, their voices rising from the past. He remembered their faces, the hungry, the grieving, the betrayed. Their accusations struck him like spears. The green glow brightened, revealing the cavern. Its ceiling arched high like a temple, but its pillars were cracked, its walls carved with hieroglyphs that shifted and twisted as if alive. At the center stood a mirror of polished obsidian, taller than a man. The whispers hushed. In the mirror appeared his reflection, not as he was now, but as he had been in life. a king robed in gold, a crown upon his brow. Yet the reflection's eyes were cold, its smile cruel. The mirror self spoke, its voice low and venomous. You seek Osiris, you seek eternal life. But you are no child of Mat, you are a liar, a tyrant. You wore the crown not to serve, but to rule. Your heart is heavy, heavier than stone. Do you deny it? The soul's knees weakened. Could it be true? In life, he had called himself just. He had built temples, honored the gods, upheld the rights. Yet had he not also taken, hoarded, commanded without mercy? The voices of his past pressed in, suffocating. The mirror glowed, and from its surface stepped the reflection, alive, walking toward him. It carried a scepter in one hand, a blade in the other. Its presence was heavy, like shadow made flesh. Face me, the false king hissed, for I am the truth you deny. The soul staggered back, the cavern shook, and from every crack, figures slithered, shadows wearing faces of the dead, his dead, the ones who had suffered beneath his reign. They circled him, whispering, accusing, gnashing teeth. The soul nearly broke, his spirit bent beneath guilt, doubt clawing at him. But then the scroll of Thoth blazed within his chest, and words rose unbidden, bright and sharp like a blade of light. I have not stolen, I have not caused hunger, I have not betrayed truth. My heart is not false, my heart belongs to Mat. The words of the negative confession, the ancient spell of purification, rang through the cavern. The shadows recoiled, hissing, and the false king snarled, raising his blade. The soul stood firm. You are not me. You are the weight of lies, the burden of regret. But my heart shall be weighed by Osiris, not by you. He thrust his hand forward, and light burst from the scroll. It struck the mirror self, shattering its crown, breaking its blade. With a cry like a storm, the false king dissolved into smoke, vanishing back into the mirror. The cavern quaked, the pillars straightened, and the whispers fell silent. The obsidian mirror cracked, then split apart, crumbling to dust. Silence. The soul stood alone, trembling but unbroken. He had faced himself fanned, prevailed. Yet as he stepped forward, a voice echoed through the cavern, not his own, not the whispers of the dead. A laugh, cold and mocking. It was said, "Well done, little king," the god of chaos whispered. "You have banished shadows of your own making, but shadows are endless. And some are not yours, they are mine. Let us see if your fragile truth can withstand the darkness I will send." The cavern opened into another passage. From its depths came a sound not of whispers, but of rushing water and the distant cries of beasts. The air smelled of rot and storm. The soul braced himself. He had survived the caverns of falsehood. But now he approached the lake of crocodiles, where even truth could be devoured. Chapter 6. The Lake of Crocodiles. The path sloped downward, carrying the soul into a cavern, vast and damp, where the air was thick with the smell of stagnant water. The sound of rushing currents grew louder until he emerged onto a rocky shore. Before him stretched a wide, black lake, its surface rippling under unseen winds. The water reeked of death and rot, and beneath its surface shadows moved, heavy, sinuous, waiting. The scroll of Thoth glowed faintly in his grasp, and words rose from its heart. Beware the lake of crocodiles. For here dwells Sobek's brood, guardians of flesh and bone. Only he who walks without fear may pass. As if in answer, the lake churned, the water split, and from the depths rose colossal crocodiles, their scales gleaming like bronze, their eyes burning with hunger. Some bore many heads, others had jaws filled with teeth, sharp as daggers, dripping venom instead of water. Their roars shook the cavern, echoing like thunder. At their center towered a monstrous figure, a man with the head of a crocodile, his body muscled and scarred, crowned with reeds, holding a scepter of ivory. His voice rumbled like floodwaters breaking stone. I am Sobek, Lord of the crocodiles, devourer of the Nile. No soul crosses my waters without tribute. What do you bring, wanderer? The soul bowed, though his spirit trembled. I bring no tribute of gold or flesh, Sobek. I bring only truth. My heart is bound to Mat, and I seek the throne of Osiris. The god's crocodile jaws widened in a grin, showing rows of jagged teeth. Truth does not feed my children. They hunger for fear, and they taste falsehood like blood. Step into my lake, and if you are unworthy, they shall strip your bones until nothing remains. The soul's chest tightened. To step into those waters was to invite death. The crocodiles circled, their eyes gleaming, their tails thrashing waves that slammed against the shore. But the scroll of Thoth pulsed once more, and he recalled the ancient words. O Sobek, Lord of waters, your teeth are sharp, your eyes keen, but I am the one who comes forth by day. I do not carry falsehood, I am not prey. I walk in Mat, and I cross as one protected by Ra. The words ignited in the air, glowing like the morning sun. The crocodiles hissed, recoiling, but Sobek roared in defiance. Words may blind, but my children shall test you. The waters erupted, and the crocodiles surged forth, snapping their jaws. The soul leaped into the lake, the cold biting into his very spirit. Immediately, the beasts lunged. One clamped its jaws around his arm. Another coiled its tail about his legs, dragging him under. Darkness swallowed him, the pressure crushing. But the scroll blazed like fire in his chest. The water around him shimmered, turning golden. Begone, devourers of flesh. The heart of Mat is not your feast. The words rang like thunder. A radiant aura burst from him, forcing the crocodiles back. They writhed and snapped, but each time they drew close, the light seared their scales. One by one, they sank back into the depths, defeated. At last, Sobek himself descended into the lake, his massive jaws opening wide enough to swallow the soul whole. His roar shook the waters, his eyes blazing like suns. But the soul did not flinch. He raised his hand and spoke the god's secret name, revealed by the scroll. You are not only devourer, Sobek, you are also protector of pharaohs, defender of Ra. By your own name, I call you to peace. The lake fell still. Sobek halted, his burning eyes narrowing. For a long moment, he stared at the soul, then slowly closed his jaws. With a voice like rolling thunder, he spoke. You know me, truly, not only as devourer, but as guardian. You have crossed with courage, without trembling. The lake is yours. The crocodiles vanished beneath the water, leaving the lake calm as polished stone. A path of light stretched across its surface, leading to the far shore. The soul walked it, each step steady, until he reached the other side. When he turned, the lake was gone, replaced by dry stone and silence, as though it had never existed. Yet, from the darkness ahead, came the faint sound of flapping wings and a foul stench like carrion. The soul shivered, for he knew the next trial would not test his truth or courage, but his very soul against the beasts that fed on the dead. He was approaching the valley of carrion birds, where the harpies of Duat waited with claws sharper than bronze. Chapter 7. the valley of carrion birds, the soul pressed onward. The damp air of Sobek's lake still clinging to him like shadow. The corridor ahead narrowed before widening again into a vast plain of stone. Above, no ceiling could be seen, only a sky of sickly gray, churned by winds that carried the stench of rot. The ground was littered with bones, cracked skulls, and scraps of flesh long since turned to dust. From the far end of the valley came a piercing cry, then another, then many. The soul looked up. Dark shapes wheeled in the sky, hundreds of them, wings spread wide, feathers black as night. As they circled lower, their forms grew clearer, monstrous carrion birds, larger than any eagle, with wingspans that blotted out the dim light. Their beaks were hooked and jagged, their talons dripping with gore. Some bore the faces of women twisted by rage, their hair like serpents whipping in the wind. Harpies of Duat, spirits of unburied death, they descended as one, their screams splitting the air. The soul braced himself. He clutched the scroll of Thoth, but fear gnawed at him. These were no beasts of judgment, no guardians of truth. They were hunger given wings, mindless devourers of flesh and spirit alike. The first wave struck. Talons raked across his arms, wings buffeted him like storms. One harpy screamed into his ear, its stench overwhelming, its eyes hollow pits of night. The soul staggered, nearly falling among the bones. From every side they came, tearing, biting, clawing. The soul raised his voice and cried the words taught in the scroll. O you who tear the flesh of the unworthy, I am not yours. I am not carrion. My Ka is strong, my Ba is whole, and I walk in the company of Ra. The words burned like fire on the air. Some of the birds shrieked and fell back, their feathers catching flame before vanishing into ash. Yet many remained, circling closer, hungrier still. One harpy, larger than the rest, landed before him. Her body was that of a vulture, but her face was that of a woman, her mouth lined with fangs, her eyes dripping black tears. She was crowned with bones, her voice shrill and venomous. You are ours, she hissed. All souls pass to us. The worms feast on kings, the birds feast on beggars. None escape the hunger of Duat. The soul trembled. I am not yours. My flesh may have perished, but my soul is bound for Osiris. The harpy laughed, a sound like shattering glass. She spread her wings, and the sky itself darkened. Then prove it. If you are not carrion, let the carrion birds test your strength. At her command, the swarm fell upon him. The soul was dragged to the ground, wings beating around him like a storm. Beaks tore at his flesh, talons raked his spirit. Pain seared through him not of body, but of essence, as if they would rip apart his Ka and scatter it like dust. But deep within, the scroll of Thoth shone once more, and a memory surfaced. Ra's passage through the night sky. Each dawn, he defeated Apophis, the serpent of chaos, by fire and light. The soul drew upon that power. He spread his arms wide and cried, I am not prey. I am a child of Ra, born of flame, and I banish you in the name of Mat. Light burst from him, blazing like the first sunrise. The birds shrieked, their feathers igniting, their forms dissolving into smoke. The harpy queen screamed and tried to rise, but the light seared through her wings, burning them to ash. With one final cry, she fell and shattered upon the stones, leaving only dust. Silence returned. The stench of carrion faded, replaced by stillness. The soul stood, battered but unbroken. Around him, The bones vanished, the plain empty once more. Only a single path stretched ahead, winding upward toward a dark archway carved with hieroglyphs. From the archway seeped a dull red glow, and the air grew hot as if fire lurked within. A voice whispered from the shadows, "Enter and face the flames that purify or consume." The soul knew he approached the hall of fire, where his endurance would be tested not by beasts or lies, but by the very element of destruction itself. Chapter 8. The Hall of Fire. The soul approached the archway, its stone walls glowing faintly with a red light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Hieroglyphs carved upon the pillars warned of peril, flames that could cleanse or annihilate, depending on the purity of one's ka. As he stepped forward, the air grew searing hot. The ground beneath his feet cracked, glowing with molten veins. Beyond the archway lay a vast chamber, an endless hall filled with fire. Pillars of flame surged from the earth. Tongues of fire licked the ceiling of smoke, and rivers of molten gold flowed across the floor. The scroll of Thoth trembled in his hand, and words shimmered across its surface. "This is the Hall of Fire, the crucible of Ra. Here the impure are reduced to ash, and the righteous are tempered like steel. Step without fear, for fire cannot harm what is true." The soul hesitated. The heat alone burned his spirit, and the flames roared like lions, devouring everything in their path. Across the fiery expanse, he glimpsed a gateway of obsidian, the only exit, but it seemed impossibly far. He took a breath and stepped into the flames. At once, the fire leaped around him, engulfing his form. He cried out as the heat tore at his essence, searing his memories, burning away illusions. His life flashed before him, the mistakes, the selfish acts, the shameful deeds, long buried, each burned in the fire, stripped bare. The voice of the flames whispered in his ears, "You carry pride, you carry anger, you carry fear. These are fuel for us. Surrender them, or be consumed." The soul clenched his fists. He had been a man of the mortal world, not free of sin. He remembered harsh words spoken, moments of betrayal, greed that clouded his judgment. The fire wrapped tighter, searing those wounds into pain. He fell to his knees. The flames closed in, hungry. Yet from within the scroll of Thoth came another verse, glowing bright. "I have not stolen, I have not slain unjustly. I have not lied against truth. Though I faltered, I seek Mat. Though I sinned, I am not false. Burn away the shadows, and let only truth remain." He shouted the words into the fire. Instantly, the flames shifted. Instead of devouring, they cleansed. His fear peeled away. His anger dissolved like smoke. His pride melted into nothing. The fire no longer hurt, but warmed him, strengthening his ka. His form glowed with golden light, tempered like a blade in the forge of Ra. But the test was not yet over. From the fire itself rose figure souls of the damned, blackened and twisted, their mouths screaming in endless agony. They reached for him, clawing, desperate to drag him down. "Stay with us," they howled. "Burn with us forever." The soul's heart quailed. Their faces shifted, friends he once knew, family he had lost, people he had wronged. The fire tried to trick him, to bind him in guilt, but he stood firm. "I grieve for you," he whispered, "but I do not belong here. My path is to Osiris." He stepped forward, and the shades fell back, vanishing into ash. The fire parted before him, forming a straight road of flame leading toward the black gateway. Each step echoed with the strength of a soul reborn, purified, unchained from falsehood. At last, he crossed the final river of molten fire and reached the obsidian gate. The flames behind him roared, then fell silent, leaving only the faint glow of embers. Beyond the gate stretched a dark corridor, cool and silent after the furnace of fire. In the distance, he heard the faint sound of chanting solemn, endless, like priests at ritual. A golden light flickered ahead. He knew he was drawing near to the greatest trial, the Hall of Maat, where his heart would be weighed against the feather of truth. Chapter 9. The Hall of Maat. The corridor of shadow opened into a hall so vast it seemed without end. Pillars of alabaster soared into darkness, carved with sacred images of Ra's solar barque and the eternal balance of Maat. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by the rhythmic chanting of unseen priests. At the far end of the chamber, upon a throne of emerald and gold, sat Osiris, Lord of the Dead, his skin the color of fertile earth, his crown adorned with tall white plumes, the crook and flail crossed upon his chest. His eyes glowed like stars in the night. Beside him stood Isis and Nephthys, goddesses of magic and mourning, their wings spread protectively. Horus, falcon-headed, watched with piercing gaze, while Thoth, ibis-headed scribe of the gods, held a reed pen and scroll, ready to record the verdict. At the center of the hall stood the great scales of Ma, at 2 golden plates suspended from a beam. On one side rested the feather of Maat, pure and weightless, symbol of truth. The other side lay empty, awaiting the heart of the soul. Guarding the scales was Anubis, jackal-headed, his eyes gleaming with impartial judgment. And near him crouched a monstrous figurehead, the devourer, part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus. She licked her jaws hungrily, awaiting the chance to feast upon the unworthy heart. The soul trembled. All the trials before beasts, fire, lies, were but preludes to this single moment. If his heart was heavy with sin, Ammit would devour him, and his Ka would be lost forever. But if his heart was light, equal to the feather, he would join the blessed in the field of reeds, or sail beside Ra in his eternal bark. Anubis stepped forward. His voice was calm, inexorable. Place your heart upon the scales. Let Maat judge. The soul placed his hand to his chest. From within, glowing red, he drew forth his own heart, not of flesh, but of essence, heavy with all deeds of his life. It pulsed faintly in his palm, trembling as though it too feared the judgment. He laid it upon the empty plate of the scales. Instantly, the balance quivered. The feather gleamed in radiant purity. The heart throbbed, weighing against truth itself. Osiris raised his hand. Speak your negative confession. Declare your innocence before Maat. The soul swallowed his fear and began to recite the sacred words from the scroll of Thoth. I have not stolen. I have not slain unjustly. I have not betrayed my kin. I have not spoken lies. I have not caused suffering without cause. I have not withheld bread from the hungry, nor water from the thirsty. I have not blasphemed against the gods. I have not broken Maat. Each declaration rang through the hall like a chime, resonating against the pillars. As he spoke, the scales flickered, the heart trembling, its darkness peeling away like smoke. But when he reached the end, the heart pulsed violently. A memory surfaced, an act of cruelty he had hidden even from himself, a man he betrayed, a friend he abandoned to misfortune. The guilt burned, and the scales tilted, the heart sinking lower. Amit growled, stepping closer, her jaws parting. The soul staggered back in horror. "Wait," he cried. I faltered. "Yes, but I sought forgiveness. I sought to walk in truth after my fall. Judge me not for one wound, but for the path I chose after." The hall trembled with silence. Anubis placed his hand upon the beam of the scales, steadying it. His jackal eyes pierced the soul. All hearts carry scars. Mat is not perfection without flaw, but truth without denial. Do you stand in truth now? The soul stood tall. His voice no longer shook. "Yes, I do." The scales glowed. Slowly, the heart grew lighter, as if his confession itself had purged its weight. The balance steadied. The feather shimmered with light. Both plates hung in perfect equilibrium. Thoth stepped forward, writing upon his scroll. The balance is true. The heart is not false. The soul has spoken in Mat. Osiris rose from his throne, his presence filling the hall like sunrise. "You are judged righteous. You shall not be devoured. You may walk the path of eternity." Met roared in frustration, retreating into shadow, denied her feast. The soul collapsed to his knees, tears of relief falling. He was spared. His essence was whole. The hall of Mat had judged him, true. But Osiris raised a hand once more. "Your journey is not yet ended. To dwell among the blessed, you must pass the gate of eternity. Beyond it lies the field of Redzor, the bark of Ra, should you choose to join the eternal struggle against Apophis." The hall shimmered, and before the soul appeared a golden door, carved with scenes of harvest, rivers, and shining stars. Beyond it, destiny awaited. Chapter 10: The Gate of Eternity. The golden door towered before the soul, its surface engraved with rivers winding through endless fields and stars glittering in the sky above. It shimmered as though alive, shifting with each breath, reflecting not just the world beyond, but the heart of the one who gazed upon it. The voice of Osiris echoed still in his mind. "Beyond lies your destiny. Choose to dwell in the field of reeds, or to take up arms beside Ra in the eternal struggle." The soul stepped closer. The air around the door was warm with promise. From its surface came whispers, gentle, inviting. He saw visions upon the golden panels, the field of reeds. Stretched before him an eternal land where the Nile's waters never ran dry, where harvests were bountiful, where family and friends awaited, restored in youth and health. He saw himself among them, smiling, free from pain, his ka at peace. Yet another vision shimmered. The Solar Barque of Ra sailing across the sky by day, plunging into the duat by night. He saw Ra wielding his scepter of fire. Gods and spirits gathered upon the deck, battling against the endless serpent, Apophis, who sought to swallow the sun. To join them meant purpose, glory, and endless vigilance. The soul's heart quivered. One path promised peace, the other eternal struggle. Both were rewards, both a fulfillment of Mat. As he lingered in thought, Thoth appeared at his side, his ibis head solemn, his scroll glowing faintly. "Every soul faces this choice," he said. "Most choose the field, for peace is what mortals desire after toil. But some, rare and steadfast, choose the bark to guard the balance of creation. Know that whichever you choose, it will be written as truth." The soul closed his eyes. He thought of his mortal life, its joys, its burdens, the regrets he left behind. He thought of the trials he had faced, the river of shadows, the fire that purified the hall of judgment. He had not come this far to cling only to rest. I have walked in Maat, he said softly. I have been weighed and found true. Peace would comfort me, but my spirit still burns. I will not lay down my strength. If Ra calls, then let me stand against the darkness. Thoth bowed, his eyes glimmering with approval. Then, so it shall be. The golden door shuddered, its engravings shifting. The vision of the field of reeds faded, leaving only the blazing image of the solar barque. The door opened with a thunderous sound, light spilling forth like dawn breaking the horizon. Beyond lay a river of starlight, winding through the heavens. Upon its waters floated the great barque of Ra, radiant with flame, its prow shaped like the falcon of the sun. The gods stood upon its deckra, fierce and eternal. Horus, vigilant with his falcon eyes, set once enemy, now guardian, against Apophis, and countless spirits of the righteous, warriors of light. Ra himself turned, his form blazing like the midday sun. His voice rang across the starlit waters. Another joins us, a soul true to Maat, tempered in fire and shadow. Come, stand with us against the serpent of chaos. The soul stepped through the gate, and the starlit river rose to carry him onto the deck of the solar barque. The gods welcomed him with nods of solemn respect. A spear of celestial bronze was placed into his hand, glowing with divine fire. Behind them, the golden gate closed, sealing away the world of judgment. Before them stretched the eternal night, where the shadow of Apophis writhed, coiled around the stars, waiting to strike at the sun. The journey was not over. It had only just begun. Chapter 11. The Battle Against Apophis. The solar barque glided upon the river of stars, its hull glowing like molten gold, its sail shimmering with the power of Ra's eternal flame. The gods stood at their posts, vigilant, for the time was near, the descent into the deepest duat, where Apophis, the serpent of chaos, awaited. The soul gripped his bronze spear, its shaft warm with divine fire. Around him were beings he had only known from hymns and prayers. Ra, radiant as the sun itself, his eyes blazing with unyielding will. Horus, falcon-headed, bow-strung with arrows of light. Set, fierce and scarred, holding the thunderous spear of storms. Bastet, the lioness, claws glowing, and countless others, guardians of Maat. An ominous silence fell as the stars dimmed. The waters of the celestial river trembled, as though recoiling from some vast presence. Then, from the abyss, a hiss rose low at first, then swelling into a roar that shook the heavens. Apophis emerged. The serpent was endless, its coils blotting out constellations, its scales blacker than the void, each scale shimmering with hatred and hunger. Its eyes glowed with malice, twin suns of ruin. Its maw opened wide, jaws spanning the sky, seeking to devour Ra's light and plunge creation into eternal night. The solar barque rocked as waves of shadow surged. The soul stumbled, but did not fall. His heart pounded not with fear, but with purpose. Ra lifted his scepter, his voice thundered. Defenders of Maat, strike. The serpent, Riz's let chaos be bound. The battle began. Horus loosed his arrows, streaks of golden fire that pierced Apophis' scales, bursting in showers of starlight. Bastet leaped across the deck, hurling daggers that spun like comets. Thoth chanted spells, his voice weaving barriers of light. Set roared, hurling his storm spear. Lightning cracked as it struck, tearing open a wound of burning chaos. The serpent shrieked, thrashing sending waves crashing against the ship. The soul felt the bark shudder beneath him. The chaos pressing in, he gripped his spear tighter. This was his trial, the reason he had chosen the path of struggle. He raised his weapon, calling upon the fire burning in his ka. "By Mat, I strike," he cried and leaped. He soared across the void, guided by starlight, and drove his spear into Apophis' hide. The serpent roared in fury, its body writhing. Darkness oozed from the wound, sizzling where it touched the light of the bark. But Apophis was endless. With a whip of its tail, it lashed the soul into the void. For a heartbeat, he spun among the stars, adrift. Shadows coiled around him, whispers tempting him. Let go, surrender. The struggle is endless, the serpent eternal. Rest, dissolve into nothing. He almost faltered, but then he remembered the Hall of Mat, the feather, the truth of his heart. He had chosen this path, not for rest, but for meaning. His voice rang through the darkness. "I will not yield. I am Mat's defender." Light erupted from his chest, his ka blazing brighter than before. The shadows recoiled. The bark's radiance reached out, pulling him back. Ra's voice thundered across the battlefield. "Well done, soul of truth. Rise once more." Strength surged within him. He landed back upon the deck, his spear glowing now with the fire of Ra himself. Together, he and the gods struck again. Arrows, spears, spells, and fire rained upon Apophis. The serpent writhed. At last, Set drove his storm spear deep into its skull, pinning it. Ra lifted his blazing scepter, and with a cry that echoed through eternity, unleashed a torrent of sunlight. The serpent screamed as its body dissolved into shadow, retreating into the abyss. For now, chaos was banished. The sun would rise again. The deck shook with the triumphant roars of the gods. The soul stood among them, his chest heaving, his spear dripping with shadow fire. He had fought and prevailed. Ra turned to him, eyes burning with approval. "You have stood firm against chaos. You are no longer a wanderer of the Duat, but a guardian of Mat. Your name will sail with us forever." The soul bowed, overwhelmed, but his heart shone with pride. He had chosen the harder path and found glory. The Solar Barque sailed onward, breaking through the last coils of darkness, carrying Ra once more toward dawn. The sun's light would shine upon the world of the living, because balance had been defended. And upon its deck, a once mortal soul stood eternal, a warrior of the gods. Chapter 12. Eternal dawn. The Solar Barque sailed upward, breaking free from the shadowed abyss of the Duat. The darkness behind them writhed and hissed, the last remnants of Apophis sinking into the void. Ahead, the horizon glowed, a river of fire and light spreading across the heavens. The sun was about to rise. The soul stood at the prow, spear still warm with divine fire. His heart was steady now, no longer weighed by fear or doubt. He had faced judgment in the Hall of Mat, endured the fires of purification, braved the illusions of shadow, and stood against the eternal serpent. He had chosen the harder path and had prevailed. Ra's voice rang out, resonant as the breaking of dawn. The night is conquered. The sun shall rise again. Life continues, and Mat endures. The gods raised their voices in triumph. Horus spread his wings, casting light across the river of stars. Bastet roared, her cry echoing with victory. Thoth's words wove new order into the world, binding chaos once more. Even Set, the Stormbringer, stood tall, silent but resolute, his spear resting at his side. As the bark drew closer to the horizon, the gates of the east opened, vast golden doors, inscribed with hymns older than time. Beyond them lay the mortal world, awaiting dawn. The bark surged forward, and the first rays of sunlight spilled across the earth, awakening deserts, rivers, and cities. The soul gazed down. He saw the Nile glisten, the fields bloom, the people stirring to life. Farmers raised their eyes to the light. Priests offered hymns. Children laughed at the morning breeze. It was for this, the living world, that the gods fought each night and would continue to fight forever. Ra turned to him, eyes blazing with both power and kindness. You have walked the trials, chosen Maat, and proven your worth. Now your destiny is sealed. You may dwell among us, eternal guardian of the bark. Your Ka shall never fade, your name never lost. You are reborn in light. The soul bowed, tears of joy in his eyes. I was but a mortal, fleeting and small, yet you have given me eternity. I will serve and I will stand. Ra raised his scepter, and a burst of sunlight engulfed the soul. His form transformed his body, woven of starlight and flame. His spear, now an eternal weapon of dawn. No longer just a traveler of the Duat, he was a guardian of the sun's path, a warrior whose strength would join the gods in their endless battle. The solar bark broke fully into the mortal sky. The sun blazed, radiant and unbroken, its warmth kissing the world below. The soul stood at the deck, his gaze firm, his heart aflame. He had chosen eternity, and he would never falter. For every night, when shadows rose and Apophis struck again, he would be there, a defender of Maat, a warrior of Ra, a guardian of the eternal dawn. And so the Book of the Dead closed, not as an ending, but as a promise that truth, courage, and the balance of Maat shall endure so long as the sun rises.